All right.
It's 12 noon on the East Coast, 9 a.m. on the West.
And this is Reprint.
This isn't breaking headlines. This is a second look with context added for perspective.
This is Reprint, edited after the headlines.
Good morning to the West Coast and good afternoon to the East Coast. This is the Reprint. We are back on a Wednesday. My name is Christal Jennings, and I am editor-in-chief for Lenox and Parker, along with my co-host Victor Flavius, the publisher, and our esteemed politics and communities editor, Stone Mims, is joining us today. Good afternoon and good morning, guys.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning from the West Coast.
West Coast.
How's everybody doing?
Oh my gosh, it's Wednesday. I have had a crazy morning.
Oh, really?
I've had a crazy morning. We have puppies. It's a lot going on here.
Yeah.
It's like, now Stone is joining us from Houston. Stone, how is it there? Is it hot? When I was there a few months ago, it was extremely hot. What is it like in Houston now?
Every day has been 100% humidity since I moved down. It was 96 degrees yesterday. It's 101 right now. I have seen, so I took a little bit of a trip abroad. I was in, which is why I haven't been on with the Lenox and Parker cast in a while. I was in Greece.
Nice.
Since I came back, I've seen 12 car accidents in Houston.
12.
So,
12. Oh my God.
12. And in a state where, open carry laws are really lax, it's actually gotten really tense sometimes because I saw two drivers get out, both having their guns holstered.
What?
So if you're in Houston, be careful driving and don't yell at anybody because you never know.
Nah, I'm good. Everybody's strapped in Texas. Yep. Mm-hmm. Georgia too.
Yeah, Georgia too.
Everybody's strapped.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Texas is bigger. Georgia is big, but Texas just feels really big, really big. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure things are a lot different there. Victor, how's the weather there in beautiful Orange County?
Nice. It's a little gloomy, it usually gets gloomy in the morning time, and then in the afternoon time, around 1 o'clock, it starts to clear up and get sunnier and hot. So this past week has been hot. 9 a.m. is like blazing sun, right? So yeah, it's been hot, but I love it. Yeah. I'm enjoying every bit of summer, every single day, 365 a year. Let's go. Summer all the time. I love it.
Well, in Georgia, I think there's just been a heat wave across the country with everybody, not just those the states that are normally warm. It's been a lot going on. But we are excited to have Stone on today because there's been a lot going on. Stone covers politics and community, and we've been talking a lot about both of those things. And so we're excited to have you on today, Stone, to kind of add a little bit of perspective from that in that space. I do want to start today's conversation with there's news. There was a third arrest in this Nolan Wells case. However, it's not an arrest pertaining to his death. The mysterious death of Nolan Wells, the 18-year-old Mississippi college football player whose body was found on Horn Island after disappearing during the 4th of July gathering, has taken another dramatic turn. Federal authorities have announced a third arrest, but it's important to note that no one has been charged in connection with Wells' death. Instead, the latest arrest involves allegations that an Illinois man threatened to kill witnesses and their families connected to the investigation. Prosecutors say the suspect sent violent messages, including a witness's home address, in an effort to intimidate those involved in the case. The latest arrest follows two earlier federal cases involving alleged bomb threats and death threats directed at Mississippi judge, witnesses, and public officials connected to the investigation. Meanwhile, the official autopsy has been completed, but his findings have not been publicly released because they're being reviewed by a grand jury. I'm assuming the toxicology report will be a part of that as well. I did some conversation over the week, earlier this week and last week about this case. And there's an article on our site that I wrote about this. I'm happy to have Stone join us today for this. Victor and I talked a little bit about it on Monday, but there's so much drama. We know that attorney Benjamin Crump has taken the case on and is working on behalf of the family to make sure that justice is, they're not accusing anyone. They just want to make sure that the truth and justice for Nolan Wells is a priority. Just listening to this, I'll start with you, Stone. What are your thoughts on seeing the way there's so much going on around witness tampering and all this, and there has not even been an indictment has not come down from the grand jury yet?
I think that the nature of this type of death, especially in Mississippi of all places, which is sort of like the ancestral lynch colony of America. I think of Nina Simone's, song "Mississippi Goddamn." I think that on one side, you have a Black community who feels as though they feel as though the investigation is not transparent. They feel as though there's a term, less dead, that comes from a man named, Eric Hickey's book in 2003, and it refers to those whose deaths go uninvestigated because they lack importance to society, right? And I do feel as though the Black inhabitants of Mississippi feel as though this is being swept under the rug. It's not being given the due diligence that it deserves. Comments have come out from the NAACP about it, saying that in a country like Mississippi, a death like this needs all public attention. And I do think that people on social media have been trying to fill in gaps that they feel have been left out of the narrative. And I think in this sort of moment where we're not getting much messaging from public officials about it, it feels as though the process is very slow. Like, people are going to, fill in gaps, and that might make things better or worse, right? On the other hand, with the just nature of the threats that came through from this man, it raises alarm bells, right? Like, just the fact that they're even without confirmation of what happened, like, there's definitely this sort of sense that the racial tension of the area has been stoked, right? So now, no matter what happened, right, no matter how Nolan died, it is now a racial incident regardless, right? Because the arrests since then have all been racially charged in some way. Victor, what about you? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so listening to what you were saying, I don't think they're moving fast enough. I remember back in the day when they had the Central Park Five.
Yep.
The 5 young boys in the park, they, was accused of whatever they were accused of, and they grabbed them off the streets. They had them detained, and there were questions, even without the parents being there. And, even Trump took out an ad in the newspaper about locking them up and, whatever the case is. And here we see a situation where we have 4 boats, because I've seen a new picture that had 4 boats and over 30 people in the water, some on the land, whatever the case is, and nobody has come forward. Nobody has said a word about what was going on. Everything is wiped clean off of social media in a time where there's so many cameras and so many devices that you could geotag everything, because everyone has phones. So if there's 30 people, there's 30 phones. Why aren't we talking about, grabbing those phones and checking to see the data on those phones and cameras? And there's so many pictures that were taken. I'm sure there are hundreds of pictures that were taken that day that could show Nolan in different areas. But because it's our community, they want to say it's not racial, but it is a very racial. It's black and white. We can't say a black kid got killed and he's with a whole bunch of white people. So what can you say? It is at the end of the day, it's a race situation, whether it be an accident or not. And the fact that they're covering things up, it makes it even more suspicious. It makes you think, what can you think, right?
Yeah.
You can think the worst, or you can think the best. You can say, well, maybe it was an accident, but if it was an accident,
And
you
why
would
are
came forward
Why are
and
we
say this was an
exactly?
accident, and so I'm not gonna sit here in 2026 and be like, oh, no, something is wrong.
Hmm.
And then when you go to all the evidence, right, from what we've seen, they kept the throat and they kept the
Yep.
lungs. Why?
Hmm.
Why are they moving so slow? Because they know that something's wrong here. But in history, when have you seen black people revolt in this country other than after slavery? Like, when have you seen any type of like major situation? We didn't burn the towns down. We didn't do Rosewood and Black Wall Street and all Lakeland, Lanier. We didn't do none of that stuff. In history, we've seen white folks burn our towns down. We've seen them lynched us millions of times. And for what? Looking at a white woman, whistling, talking, supposedly, right? But here's a situation where a black kid goes out with a whole bunch of white people. He doesn't come back. He's dead. Nothing is being done. It's quiet. The black community, all we're doing is being upset. No one's, when we bring on Benjamin Crump, people are mad at him because he's trying to help. The news
the
coverage.
governor? The governor of Mississippi spoke negatively about Benjamin Crump coming on board, being retained, and that raises a flag as well. I think to both of you guys' point. Go ahead, Victor.
One last thing, and then we have Nancy Grace's name comes on.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, oh, let's pay attention. No, come on, man. What are we talking about here, people? This is why we have this platform, because enough is enough. I mean, we can't sit around and watch this happen and expect keep doing the same things every single time and get the same results every single time.
Last thing I'll sort of say on the topic is I feel as though, especially as Black people, we need to be cognizant of the contradiction of surveillance, right? In the sense that it feels as though Black people are constantly monitored, we constantly surveilled to our detriment, with the argument sort of being around sort of like that it's for the sort of sake of protection. But notice that like Black people, like in this sort of surveillance world where everything's on film, right, where everything that you do is being monitored, none of this monitoring has ever benefited us sort of finding justice, right? If you need to find a Black person who's committed a crime, like Fox News will have that covered. It will be covered very thoroughly, even without, and the assumption will be made. Like I go back to, I think about Charlie Kirk's assassination and how HBCUs got threatened in the aftermath, and it turned out to be a white person who committed that crime. Mm-hmm. Like Black guilt and like voyeurism and surveillance around Black people, it only serves to entrap or endanger us. There's never a point in which this sort of surveillance state uses its resources to find us justice. It is only to incarcerate, only to invoke penalty, never to help us find out what happens to our kids, because this is not the first time. There's been several incidents this year, actually, where a Black person's been found hanging from a tree, and the local police force says, "Oh, we don't suspect foul play," almost as though that's sort of like a guttural impulse to not investigate. So it's very hard for a population that's lived through this for hundreds of years, just the police saying, "Oh, we don't think that there's any foul play involved." It's very hard for us to take those claims seriously, given our history.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask one last question about the youth, because I think this case is going to be going on. I don't think they're going to be able to sweep it under the rug because there's been so much attention. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, when you do have someone like Nancy Grace, who was not a part of the African-American community, add light to it, it does have, then it becomes a priority in a different way. For her to say, she had a young lady on there's been a lot of conversation about the 911 tape. We played it courtesy of Dennis Byron with the Hip Hop Inquirer, shared that audio recording of the tape that was recorded when one of the young people called for an emergency and said one of the boats was sinking. There's been a lot of audio engineers being able to take some of the sound off, and people have come up with different things. But we know that this is because of the national attention is getting due to Benjamin Crump and now, you know, Nancy Grace and other people being a part of the just asking questions. It's not going to be able to be swept under the rug. But there were two other cases that Attorney Crump brought to the press conference with the NAACP of one young man that was they're saying that there has been no foul play with him hanging himself, another 8, and these 3 Black 18-year-old young men. So my question to both of you, because you both have understand and have been in situations where you may have been the one of one, right, or one of a very in a predominantly white space. There raises the question: is it for parents with young people? Do we need to be more aware, and should we put things in place potentially when we do have young African Americans that are in a predominantly white space? How do you think parents should handle that? Because I you know, had as a parent had daughter and son in predominantly white spaces for you know, their early years. And Victor, I know you've done the same. So I know you've been that predominant that one Black or one of 4, you know, in a predominantly white space. I think there's danger both physically, as we see in these situations, but also there's a lot of emotional baggage and potentially abuse that can happen in those spaces. What do you think these situations are teaching us about how we should move in the future?
So let Stone go first.
Mm-hmm. I think on the parent level, it's really hard to ask Black parents to do more than they're doing. Like, no other race of people has to sit down with their child and say, if you interact with a police officer, comply, you know, put your hands on the dash. Oh wait, can you guys still hear me?
We can hear you. You're frozen a little bit. Mm-hmm. He's frozen a lot.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna pick up where he's left it off. Yeah, no one has. We don't have to go too far with this because, like Stone said just now, no other nationality or ethnic group have to explain to their child. You good to go now? You good? Okay. Have to explain to their child.
Yeah, but continue on. Sorry for blanking out.
No, that's fine. Yeah, no one has to explain to their child what to do when you go outside, if you see the cops, if you see authority. As a matter of fact, we are raised in a very, how Black people are raised, you know, we're raised with respect to elders, to authority, to others, right? We're not raised to just talk anyhow to someone. As a matter of fact, when we were kids coming up, we're taught to talk to our elders as Mr. and Mrs. or, you know, uncle or whatever the word is. But in most groups, it's just first name basis, right? No respect, no level of authority and power structure, because they don't have to. You know, I feel like emotionally and mentally, that's something that goes on in our brains. It happens. It's something like PTSD almost. You know, raising Black kids in white spaces, or even myself being in white spaces whenever I was younger, growing up in Boston, and you know, whatever the case is, and being around that, you have to carry yourself different because people are always looking at you, judging you. You know, it's not a good place to be, but you build tough skin, right? When you get in these situations, you have to. I mean, what else are you going to do?
Cost? Yeah, I wonder at what cost. I mean, I attended the University of Oklahoma, and at the time I attended, there were probably less than 1,000 Black students and 23,000 white students. There were a few other minorities as well. This was back in the 90s, and so things were very different. We didn't have social media, but we were called the N-word numerous times. I think it bears conversation because this continues to happen. And I also do not want to assume, I want to play devil's advocate, Victor. I don't want to assume that all Black children are raised the same way. I think we're not a monolith on either side. So we do have, there are Black children that are raised with respect to elders. And then there are also Black children that are not raised in those spaces. But regardless, just because of the color of your skin, it should not mean that if you are around others, there is this blanket that we have to carry that others don't have to carry. To what you were saying, it's like the fact that parents have to have an additional conversation with teenagers. These are teenagers. These are, high school students on a boat, drinking, doing different things, acting like teenagers do. So on one hand, I understand why there isn't anyone, why no one has come forward, because most parents, their goal in life is to protect their children. So if this was even an all Black situation and one child goes missing and is unalive and ends up unalive, I don't know that I would have encouraged my children to be involved with coming forward. I mean, I would hope that I would, but a lot of times as a parent, your number one goal is your own children and to make sure your children are safe and that your children are, preserved and able to move forward with their life. It's just unfortunate that we also have this.
I mean, I guess the problem with that is like it's one thing when a single parent, but one of the kids involved in this is the kid of a judge, right? A kid who's like involved in the legal system. So like, yeah, should parents use as much of their power as possible to protect their children? Yes. But that feels different when one has very distinct legal protections, like who occupies positions of power that are already exacerbated by, just sort of white privilege in general, right? Like this is like a very specific, and no, like honest, like am I asking that like we do like a witch hunt for 18-year-olds? No, right? But there is like something to be said that certain certain populations of teenagers are protected, right? Do benefit from connections, do benefit from just the social stratus of being white in America. And if you're a Black, I mean, I think of Tamir Rice. If you're a Black kid 12 and up, like it's open season and anything can happen to you.
Yeah.
And, I wish that more Black children were receiving the protection that these white kids were receiving. I think that's sort of like where it comes from. I think that white people have accomplished the dream where they're able to protect their children because people take the threat to their children more seriously. Black children go missing all the time. Talk to a mom in New Orleans, right? Like there are huge discrepancies on, how people outside of the Black community look at our children.
I got a question. Do you think that there's some type of like stalling on their part because for the investigation to move this slow? Because you got 30 people, they should have already confiscated phones, confiscated devices or whatever the case is, and talked to people and interviewed witnesses, interviewed all these people. But we haven't heard anything at all. We haven't heard that one person was interviewed or not. We don't even know where the investigation is. All people are doing is speculating at this point on footage that the Cajun National Navy is given. The cops aren't saying it, the sheriffs aren't saying nothing, the judge, no one's saying anything at all at this point. Not even the federal government. No one's, other than the autopsy was done and they got it back and it's inconclusive or whatever they say it is. So my thoughts are the people that are involved stalling? Because at this point, we're left with our hands open, asking questions. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think so. I think that this happened July 4th weekend.
Yeah.
And it's sad because, to Stone's point, there are a lot of situations like this that happen that we don't even hear about, right? So this one, just because of the parents and Nola's parents are very well off. This is a group of affluent Black family, and white families. So they also are very affluent. However, we're in August, and there just doesn't seem to be urgency, a sense of urgency placed with, that is concerning. And I think as a result of that, a lot of people are looking for headlines. Unfortunately, news now has become a way for people to get clicks, and people that have no journalistic background are now speaking up, which is not bad, because in some cases, some people are able to actually figure things out and have been able to be a part of positively influencing and affecting court cases as of recent. It also allows people to speak up and say, no, this is a priority, which back before social media was around, that would not happen. I mean, we've seen this happen in numerous cases where social media angst has created cases to be reopened and things to move forward. So I'm not upset with that. But I think what is a problem is sometimes, because we don't see them moving, we do see people trying to figure out things on their own. And it's just unfortunate. But it's not just unfortunate for the parents of Nolan Wells in his case, it's also for all these other situations. I know we can't go, we're going to be talking about this more, but at that NAACP press conference, Attorney Crump brought the other two families up to give them a voice as well. But I think that it's important that we as Black media do give these things a voice and do insist upon making them a priority, because if we're not talking and we don't keep the conversation going, we know that others are not going to be responsible for our children,
Yeah, we have to be responsible. We have to be responsible for our children and our community, and these conversations need to continue being had, because who else is going to do it? If this was another group of people, if like again, Central Park 5, they locked them up right away. Every time something happens in our community where something goes on, we get locked up right away, and then then go through the process as fast as we can. We get the maximum time, like the kid who was locked up recently for 35 years for stabbing that other kid that caused.
That was Carmelo. Carmelo.
Yeah, exactly. And we saw it move so fast that he got picked up, and then he was,
that did move very fast. I guess the situation was different, but I mean, the biggest situation was they were able to prove that the Black young kid was, part of the problem. And there are still that case. They're appealing that case, so we'll be sure to just keep everyone posted on that as well. I want to move forward as we're to the Georgia governor's race, which is heating up as we move into midterm seasons. And after this primary, Georgia's race to replace the term-limited Republican Governor Brian Kemp is officially underway. And it could become one of the most closely watched gubernatorial elections in the country. On the Democratic side, former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms secured her party's nomination, positioning herself to try to become Georgia's first Democratic governor in nearly 3 decades. The Republican primary was far more competitive. No candidate received the required majority, forcing a runoff between Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, who was endorsed initially by Donald Trump, and billionaire businessman Rick Jackson, whose self-funded campaign dramatically reshaped the race. We know that Rick Jackson did end up the victor, and he will face off against Keisha Lance Bottoms in November. Georgia remains America's ultimate battleground. Every statewide race now carries national implications for both parties. Can Keisha Lance Bottoms rebuild the Democratic coalition? What do you guys think?
Yes, she can.
I think yes, but that's not where I want to start. The first thing I want to sort of take time to say is just as a person who grew up in Georgia, I like to take my victories where you can. I'm just glad Brian Kemp is done. So having him out in any context, we take the W's where we can get them. As for questions about like things that I think we can be optimistic about, I think it's a very good thing that the Republican Party in Georgia is fractured. I think that there is a lot of general Trump dissatisfaction. So a Trump endorsement does not mean what it would have meant 6 months ago. That's not universally the case. He's still too popular for my liking, but at the same time, right? I do think there are many conservatives. I think about like this sort of faction of larger conservatives, I think of like the Tucker Carlsons, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, the sort of like there are fractures in that party. And now we see it trickling down to local and national levels, right? Outside of just that sort of first faction breaking away. And I think this is the time to take advantage, right? The fact that the Democrats, we were so, it's, I mean, we'll talk about this later, but, often we've had Democrats we've had our own sort of splintered factions. It is really good and heartening that, she won her primary with such a strong command, right? I think that leadership in terms of what we need to be looking for from the Democratic Party are people who are resistant to top-down orders from the president. And there's good signs there. I remember when she was mayor back in 2020, Brian Kemp ordered mask mandates be sort of rolled back. She actually pushed for them to be strengthened, right? So she was willing to show resistance to conservative leadership during a time of crisis. Under Trump, almost every moment is a time of crisis. So if we're going to have a governor on the Democratic side, we definitely need someone who's willing to show a backbone. So there are some positive signs, right? And I do think that more than anything else right now, like when I think about the failing Democratic leadership of the past, I think of George Floyd dying and the immediate Democratic response be to like Nancy Pelosi and Kente Cloth, right? Just how performative and ineffective like former leadership has been. And I think more than anything else, especially young voters, are looking for strength, are looking for people who are willing to call the BS the BS, to, use the power of government and legislation to push back, right, against some of the fascism that we've seen coming down. So I think there's a lot of optimistic things to look forward to. But yeah, only time will tell.
Yeah, I think people want to see, I mean, at least for me, I want to see a Black woman in position of power. I'm tired of seeing white men in position of power and the status quo. I mean, not to be black or white, right? But I mean, we've seen the turnouts, we've seen how people vote, we've seen stuff happen. And to me, historically, the way how I look at things are, this country had, of course, the power structure is white men first, then Black people got a chance to vote, women, and then, second, and then, the other communities came in afterwards. So I think we've been positioned as a country and a society to have a woman in power. I mean, if you look at all the TV shows, movies, I always say pop culture and politics kind of go hand in hand. So you see if they want you to be looking at a certain candidate, they'll start pushing that more in the media. And we've seen a lot of TV shows and movies where with Madam President, even the recent one on the Tyler Perry BET with the mayor, so we've seen it. And we've seen a number of women become governors across the United States. Wisconsin, I think, has a governor. There's female. New Jersey, Boston. So we've seen the trend growing way of more women, but women of color to be governor is probably a different level. So we have one Black governor right now, which is Wes Moore, and we need more. So I think Keisha has spent her time in politics well. Maybe not the best mayor Atlanta has seen. Of course, there's a lot of controversy behind her, but who hasn't had controversy? Even the current mayor has controversy now going on with his name and whatever he's doing. So, and again, we know this is a patriarch system we're dealing with, the good old boy system, whether it be good old boy Black or good old boy white, it's still a good old boy system. So it's hard to break through. So I hope she can make some changes. Of course, one person can't make all the changes, but at least when you have a Black person in power, I would say everyone tends to get a little bit more happening versus a white person in power. I don't know. I mean, that's just my thoughts. But get Kemp out of here.
I guess I would say for those that are skeptical of Kemp, Rick Jackson will be even more.
Yeah,
That's true.
Extreme. So, I actually, I consider myself an independent, but I actually like a lot of the things that Kemp has done for the state of Georgia.
okay.
So I think that there have been positives, obviously, and he also was anti. I mean, he and Trump got into it. He stood up against him. There was to Stone's point about the party being fractured. That I believe started with Trump and Kemp. Here in Georgia, there was a lot of disconnect there. Rick Jackson is not someone that is anti-Trump. In fact, recently there was a Trump came to Georgia at a school to be a part of giving away something, but really was a midterm political rally, and so Rick Jackson said that because he did not have Trump's initial endorsement, he stated that he was going to be Trump's favorite governor by the time, once he got in office. So I would just say to anyone that was critical of Kemp, you can only be certain that Rick Jackson is going to be more of that. And he's going to align himself with whatever Trump wants. He comes from that. He is a billionaire. He is not a politician. Even his ads were so overtly exclusive.
Yep.
And it was troubling, like just very, very troubling. Some of the campaign ads that were very obviously not like, I'm not there to support certain communities and groups. And it's shocking. Now, I do also want to be acknowledged. There were some issues with as far as trust. I think when you're talking about a governor, people often forget that Georgia is not Atlanta. I don't know why people assume.
Oh yeah,
is Atlanta.
Georgia's
Atlanta
red.
is not right, and they say Georgia turned blue. But I would think I really thought if Georgia would have voted for a Black female governor, it would have been Stacey Abrams, right? If that was a possibility, I think that Stacey had a very strong campaign. She had a lot of strong support. Her platform was. I just don't. I think that she was a great candidate, and if we had been able to pull that off, then I would feel more confident in Keisha being able to pull this off. Now, it could be that the timing wasn't right then, and the timing could be right now. But I think there are a lot of people that were not, because again, Atlanta is not all Black either. People forget, even though Atlanta has a Black mayor and has had a Black mayor for years, there was a pretty tight race. The last couple of times where Mary Norwood, I mean, there was a lot of contention, and thankfully we were able to, the Keisha was able to win, and then Andre, who was doing an amazing job, now is mayor. But I think when it comes to leadership, I personally did not see a lot of amazing, strong leadership from Keisha when she was mayor. I do see that in Andre. I think he would. I think he would be an amazing governor because he's been an amazing mayor. I think Keisha also, she also was mayor during a very difficult time. So I'm not saying that was indicative of her ability, because she was mayor during 2020 when things were very, very difficult politically for everyone across the board. So people were going to be critical of anyone who was mayor at that time. But I do want to just acknowledge, we can't just say that everyone in Atlanta was extremely happy with the job that she did as mayor. I do hope that she's able to be successful just for the sake of the state. I think that Rick Jackson is extremely polarizing and is definitely will take us in a very different direction than the people of Georgia deserve. But I don't think it's going to be an easy race. I think people underestimate the surrounding cities, suburbs, and rural areas in the state of Georgia.
I think there's a couple of things I look at too. One being the fact that Keisha served with Biden. When she left, she went over to the Biden administration. So I think, to me, when I look at politics, for the most part, I look at the fact of, because it's more about who you know and not what you know, right? So in this game of politics, Keisha is a little bit more balanced because she's been to the White House. She's been a mayor of the city of Atlanta. So she's she could make the argument that yes, I rub shoulders with these people I've been to DC, so I know who to talk to if you want to get a problem solved versus the other guys who have business but they don't know how to talk to the other people. So I think that's a good strategy, I would say, on her part, a plus for her. And so when you mentioned Stacey Abrams before, I don't know if she had those type of affiliations because that's what makes the difference.
No, she did. Stacey definitely had all the affiliations.
In DC
she did,
well?
But I'll say that she was. I would say, like, in my ideal world, she would be government like Stacey Abrams. But I'll say this: if you're trying to convince like what is at best a purple state to vote with you, Stacey Abrams was vocal about things that America will not be ready for 20 years.
Exactly. That's why
she's like talking about like prison reform in such a way that the average person that I grew up with in Georgia would laugh her off of a stage. Like she was so intellectually outspoken. She was so much of a threat against the existing power structures as people in Georgia perceived them. That I don't get that same feeling from.
No, Keisha's not.
Like I don't get that. So, and in an ideal world, 100%. I would have loved to have like a governor, Stacey Abrams, when I was living in Georgia. But I guess you could say both a flaw in the flaw is something we can take advantage of in that Keisha is not going to be as outspoken about some of those issues as Stacey Abrams was.
Mm-hmm. I like to call that the kindler and gentler Negro sometimes goes down easier. Sometimes we'll take the, someone that's a little easier to get along than the more outspoken.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not opposed to a Republican governor either, because I know in Massachusetts, when I lived there a few years back, we had a Republican governor, and he was actually a great asset for the state. People actually loved him, and he served 2 terms, and it was good. So I always look at the person as well too. Stacey is a force to be reckoned with. Keisha, not so much on that side, but you take what you can get and you try to move the ball forward as best you can with the best candidate. And so I wish both of them, well, I actually don't. I actually want to see Keisha win because I just want to see Keisha win.
Yeah.
I don't know Keisha.
we try to be biased as much as we can, but it's difficult to be biased in these political waters currently. Another social question that also can have some political backlash because the person that we're talking about has been aligned with political topics and platforms throughout his career. Roland Martin is currently at the center of some very flagrant viral allegations. Veteran journalist and political commentator Roland Martin is facing intense online scrutiny after media takeout and most importantly, Tasha K published allegations involving his personal life, including claims of infidelity and the existence of explicit photos and videos. The story has spread rapidly across YouTube and social media, fueling speculation and commentary. At this stage, many of the allegations remain unverified. There are people that are that have seen some of the video and the photos. Several commentators have discussed the controversy and emphasized the distinction between public allegation, rumors, and independently confirmed facts. Some reports have also raised the possibility that Martin may have been the target of an alleged extortion attempt, though the details have not been independently substantiated. Controversy has quickly evolved beyond Martin himself, prompting broader conversations about media ethics, privacy, and the spread of online gossip. This raises a question to me because I don't necessarily. Roland Martin is not a political figure. He is a journalist, and he is a. I think he has a voice in the Black community. He does have a very distinct voice. He has a platform. He has an audience. I did not realize he was married, but he is a married man who is. There have been pictures of him involved in some type of affair with a young lady. And these pictures have now been published, and people are talking about it. My question for us today is, should what happens in our private lives, how much of an effect or impact should that have on your public, seating, specifically when it comes to your job? Roland Martin is someone that he is a voice, not necessarily like say he's aligned with politics, but he has a platform where he speaks to civil and civic rights. Should personal, irresponsibilities or discrepancies be taken into account when you're talking about the work and the platform that someone has in a public space? Because a lot of times this is used. I mean, we have another case that we may not get to today, but we may talk about on Friday, where in every political race, whenever someone wants to silence someone, they will make them the target, and people on the opposite side will go and look for content or for for anything that they can do to besmirch that person's character with their audience. Where do we draw the line? Is there a line to be drawn, and how should we handle this moving forward? A lot of people are like, oh, Black media should not report this scandal on him, but he is also part of reporting other scandals. So how do you all see us handling these type of situations? Stone, I'll start with you.
I mean, it's a good question. I think that, and it's one that I think it's nuanced, right? Because on one hand, I think that sometimes the nature of a scandal is so perverse, right, that the public should have, a way in, right? Like it would be hard for me to excuse all infidelity, all like when I look at our president and like the 54 crimes found guilty of, right? Like I do think at a certain point people should be held accountable, and the public plays a role in that. That being said, I do think we as the American people are overly surveilled. Mm-hmm. I think that we don't we as a culture have lost track of what redemption looks like. So we are very quick to form lynch mobs and very slow to accept reform. So I do think that the solution to this is sort of like nebulous and messy. I think that in an ideal world, we'd be a little bit more patient and have grace for people, because I know for a fact that I would not like it if all of my worst mistakes were broadcast to the world without context. At the same time, I don't think I would ever run for public office, or I don't think that I would participate in some of the like sort of more scandalous based convert. Like, I think that certain times, like due to the nature of your job, like that, if you want to do that, you have to be open to the risk of that happening. Especially if you're going to be someone who profits off of it when you're doing it to other people, right? Mm-hmm. So for Roland Martin, like he would do this to himself if if the shoe was on the other foot, right? He would do it. So it's kind of hard to have empathy in that way. Does
for you as someone that may, I don't know if you are listen to his platform, or are you someone that has kind of taken into, knows about his politics and how he does speak out, and he has a voice for the community. Would it affect the way you receive his commentary, knowing his behavior behind closed doors?
I mean, like I'm like very much like a person who believes that a message can be impactful. I grew up Christian. I grew up with this belief that we're all inherently sinners, that we do things, right? But that doesn't mean that everything that we do, right, needs to be marred by that. Like for me, like I can't say that I know like people in the generation above me felt very impacted, for instance, by the Cosby Show. At the same time, right?
That's you, Christal.
I know.
At the same time, like Bill Cosby did some awful things, right? I think that we can hold two truths at once and be like, oh, like the Cosby Show did something for representation that was like probably necessary for Black people at that time, while also condemning, like on the personal level, like, oh, this is messed up.
Yeah.
This person went too far. This person used their power. Da, 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 da. I know that people feel controversial about the book. I don't want to like, but that's just the first example that comes to my mind. So I think that we need to, as people, be comfortable holding multiple truths at once. Like Malcolm X is one of my greatest heroes. Malcolm X spent his life as a early 20-year-old pimping and thieving and threatening murder, right? People can be multiple things. And I do think that we as individuals just need to figure out what our limits are, right? Because certain things are too far. Like for me, if you pop up in like the Epstein files or something, yeah, I'm probably done with you, right? So like I think this is a question of individuals, right?
Right.
And I think when we look at someone like Roland Martin, who's accused of infidelity, I think everyone gets to decide like whether or not that's too much for them to stomach, or whether they find it hypocritical with some of his other beliefs, or whether they find it inconsistent. For me, I can say that some of the things that he said message-wise still resonate with me, even if I find him to be a distinctly flawed person.
So I have a different take on this, right? My first thing as I'm listening to both of you speak is that comes across my mind is why. Why is this even a subject? Why now, and why Roland Martin? So those are the questions I come across. Why? Because before time, he's been on a platform for 10 years, maybe even more. And I've never heard this before. Usually behavior is behavior. It happens over a period of time, and why and why now? Also, Roland Martin has his own platform. Roland Martin is not on anybody else's platform. He was on CNN. He was a correspondent for a while. He got fired, let go, whatever. He built his own network. He's been standing on his own 2 feet. Is he controversial? Sometimes, yes. We know in this space you sometimes kind of have to be in order to get the clicks, in order to get the views. But Roland Martin has been a voice in the community that has been outspoken about politics. He's been outspoken about where he stands for his love for Black women, the community, not just on a national level, but also on a local circuit as well too. And for this to come out now about him, to me, he's not an elected official. He's not a selected official. He has there's nothing that he's doing that is harming the public or any particular group. No one's paying him any money. Maybe his sponsors might be, but that's neither here nor there. So I look at this as, again, why? Why is it this man's infidelity an issue when it comes down to what his message is? His message is not about, he's not a what do you call it?
Relationship
expert. He's not.
Right?
He's not in those realms. He's talking politics. He's talking about things that going on, in the political world. He's very strong about the midterms, what's happening. He's very strong about pro-Black voice. So again, this is like, I don't know where Tasha K got her stuff from. Somebody obviously gave it to her because she's not going out there looking for this stuff. So why? Who's giving? And I've seen House of Cards. I know how it works. I'm saying, who's giving? Because why, right? Why Roland Martin and why now? Those two things. And again, he's not an elected or selected official. He's not on any payroll or anybody's government books. He has his own network. He's not on CNN. He's not on BT. There's nobody that can fire him. He's his own man. So at the end of the day, no one's saying this, like why? He didn't harass a staff member. He didn't, he didn't mess with a underage woman or underage boy. This is an infidelity that happened. If it even is true, we don't even know, allegedly, right? Did his wife come out and say anything? No. So at the end of the day, between him and his wife, his marriage, that's between them two. Now, if she decides to come out and say something, and she decides to get a divorce, that's between them two. It's not between nobody else. And so I don't think it's relevant to this, to our, it's not helpful.
It's any of our business.
It's a distraction. I don't see anything. I mean, you know.
I do want to
No,
add,
that's true.
Roland Martin has there was some backlash earlier this year towards him after there was a murder suicide that was public. I mean, things move so fast. Our news cycle is crazy right now. But back in April of 2026, there was a murder suicide of dentist and community member Serena Fairfax by her husband, who was the Virginia Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax. So Justin was a frat brother of Roland Martin, and Roland Martin posted. He put up a post on his social media attempting to humanize Fairfax, Justin, his frat brother, who was no longer alive, and people were saying that his empathy. Critics were saying that he was too empathetic towards the person that committed the crime, because he asked, for talking about mental health when it comes to Black men. Martin shared personal photos of Justin Fairfax in fraternity gear and discussed his political downfall and mental distress following past allegations. So the public went crazy. Specifically, Black women were definitely upset with Roland because this woman was unalived and there seemed to be very little empathy towards her. And later, the leadership from the fraternity, which was Sigma Phi fraternity, requested Sigma Pi Phi fraternity requested Martin remove the organizational references from his post. He later deleted the post and addressed the fraternity's policy and dedicated segments on his show, Roland Martin Unfiltered, to discuss this domestic violence and Black male mental health. He did respond quickly to that. I mean, women were dragging him. There was threads. I think I told you about this yesterday, Victor. Mm-hmm. A lot of women were recounting interactions with him that were definitely, they felt unsafe, or that, mm-hmm. They were accusing him of being flirtatious in different ways. So there was a lot and this was just a few months ago. Like I said, our news cycle moves so fast. Most of us have forgotten about this. But to his point, Roland Martin was showing empathy to someone that unalived his wife and himself, right? I think that we are all human and we all make mistakes. And I'm sure most people would not want the public to have access to their personal, what they do in their bedroom and all, and that type of thing. However, when you have a platform of that size, I think it just comes with the territory, right? And that a lot of the people that follow you, a lot of people that support you, they believe they hold you to a moral standard. And if you are not, it's kind of like you got to be able, if you're going to take the blessings and the financial benefits of having a platform, then you also have to be willing and prepared to take the backlash when that goes in the opposite direction. Specifically, I think, if he was talking about relationships, I probably wouldn't take it so seriously. But when you're talking about politics and you're speaking of things with a moral code that kind of is wrapped around them, then it feels a bit hypocritical. But I do think that he is a public figure. He's not a political figure. So there's no one that can fire him. He owns his own platform. It's kind of like when Shannon Sharp had this scandal.
Way different. Way
no,
different.
No,
but I get what you're saying. I'm saying way different in like there were so many elements to that made it.
There were some racial, but there are some elements to this that make it scandalous.
No, for sure. And I like the more that comes out, right? The more there are more parallels for sure. I guess like the thing that I wonder, I think it really comes down to a question of how perfect does any Black commentator have to be in order to maintain a platform throughout a mistake, right? Like on the farthest side of this, I see and this is like was really popularized. I think this feels rather recent. Like it comes up every few years about like MLK's infidelities or lack thereof. Just with how monitored he was and how many things were forged about him. But there are a lot of conservatives who argue that he's a terrible person who should not be lauded as a civil rights activist anymore because of his
icon,
inconsistencies. Right? And I find that to be a morally abhorrent. I don't believe that he was, but even if he was, I don't think that impacts my ability again to sort of see him as like a hugely impactful figure who's been necessary for something, like something happened through him. Obviously, Roland Martin is not MLK. It's not what I'm saying. But I do think that like the reason I use the MLK hyperbole is because you can be so virtuous in so many ways, right? As a Black man, as a Black person, even as a Black woman, of course, right? And you have a scandal come out and it tears down your legacy so quickly in a way that, I think of all of the crazy things some white celebrities have done, from underage like women to underage girls to sex scandals to like everything under the sun,
drug addiction, just
correct, right?
Yeah,
and it doesn't define their legacy in the same way that our mistakes do, and so that's another element to this, right? Now, I will say this from a Black woman perspective, right? From like when I'm empathizing with Black women who might be frustrated with the situation, I do feel like Black women have seen a lot of Black men hide behind certain narratives of protection, being like, "Oh, I'm just a Black man who's being extorted," when there legitimately was a history of, of grievances, right? So it becomes hard to hold both of those things. That there is a historic truth to the fact that Black men have been, subject to witch hunts, right? Like that is one true reality. It is another true reality that Black women have endured, right? A lot of abuse of Black men claiming to be, right, in the middle of a witch hunt. And I think that's why I think there is like a very different gendered response that we have to Roland Martin, that's probably based in that world.
And I think Black women are the louder voice. And often when a Black man is accused of something, he will run to Black women for support. And there's numerous examples of that. That's the first thing as a PR representative we look for. Oh, we've got to go make sure that Black women are supporting him. And I think that Black women are tired often of getting held to both. We are who you are. Often the infractions are against us from you, and then we are also the first ones you expect to support and laud you, and that is overwhelming and sometimes becomes a burden that we'd like to sit down. We would like to put that burden, down. There have been numerous public figures, actors, when you get into a bad situation with others, then you come to us. But even when you, in this situation, from what I have seen, this was another Black woman that he was with. The photos and video are very scandalous. We're not going to talk about the nature of them.
I haven't seen them,
but
so I don't know.
It's very, very scandalous. Where it's very, very scandalous. So for a lot of times, Black women are expected to support Black men even when they are cheating on, harassing, like that. We get held responsible for the healing and the putting Black men back in a safe space. And that's, like I said, that's sometimes something that we are tired of being responsible for.
I got a question. Should Tasha K have put that video out or that whole thing out, or should we have, like, as a community, should we have left it alone? I mean, I don't know why. I'm just asking.
It's two different things. You said Tasha K and then you said the community. Tasha K's job, that is what her platform is known for. Scandals. Is for scandals and for outing, public figures, and that's what she does. So I don't think that she is representative of the Black community.
No, I'm not saying she is. I'm not saying she is. I'm just saying as far as our media companies ago? Because I know there's not a ton of media, black media. There's not
It's not.
So
but I don't
so I'm just
consider
saying,
her. She's not a journal. She's not. She does gossip.
Okay.
Salacious gossip. So that's very different.
No.
I do think for me the big issue is around consent. Like I'm a huge advocate of like consent around sexual situations.
Right.
And I do think that there's something implicitly wrong. Like not just happening to Roland, but also happening to the woman he was with, that these photos were like put out, like that photos and videos, etc., were put out, right? Like that is a violation on like a human level, right?
Right.
Like that's somebody's body being exposed. That's somebody, like there's levels to the ways in which this are messed up. Not even as a journalist, but just as a human being that, especially like, I don't know, I feel like it's interesting to me that like when like we talk skating, because I feel like most women know what it's like especially in like the digital age of like nudes getting leaked and like I feel like most of us are aware of how violating that can be. Like even so, like even if it's your job to like put out a scandal, I feel like talking about it is one thing, right? Like I think that's like fair ball, but images I think are different.
Yeah.
But do you think like from a human to human level, adults, right? Do you think that cheating or infidelity is on the same level of like,
No.
SA or
No.
No. I'm not saying it is what you think. I'm saying like in the media world when it comes to scandal, like, oh, he cheated with his girlfriend, or she cheated on her boyfriend. And
it's been weaponized that way, and it started from the political landscape when Bill Clinton they attempted to impeach him in office. Now it could have been also because he was having a relationship with his intern, but the majority of the conversation was just about him being a cheater, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, like, are we really going to? And now the fact that later you look at the positions of power and the fact that this was a 24-year-old that was a lot younger that was working for him, but the focal point of that campaign against Bill Clinton was the fact that he was cheating on his wife. And there have been numerous other politicians that as soon as they go into, to your point, Victor, about why now, as soon as they start their campaign for office, then all of a sudden text messages, photos, receipts are shown of their infidelity, and that does shake the trust of their constituents. It does in many cases. Specifically, I don't know the difference, and I have to look that up if there's a difference between female voters and male voters, but we do know that overall approval ratings drop when a candidate is accused and convicted of being in an extramarital affair. Do I think that's fair? No, because I think that, if a person is working at, UPS and they're in upper level management, corporate UPS, and they have an affair, I don't think that affects their job. So I don't think it's fair for us to hold politicians, but it's still, you're taking on an oath to do something different and to represent the public. And if the public loses faith in you because of what you're doing.
Right, I agree. But in Roland Martin's case, he has no political.
He's not representing the public, but
that's what I'm saying.
He is involved in a lot of conversations to advocate for the Black community. And so that may make people.
I mean, I get it, but I'm just saying, like, it's not like you're exposing him because he molested a child or he did something egregious, like rob, like, take millions of dollars
it's not
from
criminal.
people.
He's not done anything criminal. I think that's the difference. But
that's why I'm like, I get it. I get her job, but at the same time, I'm like, well, it doesn't. It's almost like, I know it's not the same thing, but it's almost like me seeing a video of Roland Martin in the shower singing a Whitney Houston song and sounding horrible. It's a joke. Why expose? You know what I'm saying? So like, what are we gaining by this? I don't know. That's just my take on that. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get ready to wrap today's conversation. We have more, and we'll get into that on Friday. But before we get out of here, we want to make sure that we do our inspirational quote of the day. Inspirational quote of the day, which is the very first one in how to win when ish happens, which is I am love, I am light, I am powerful beyond my wildest dreams and imaginations. We want you to say that with us today. The professional quote is two of the most powerful words for what you put after them shape your reality. I am are two of the most powerful words for what you put after them shapes your reality by Gary Hensel. I believe that. And I say, if you all say today with us, I am love, I am light, I am powerful beyond my wildest dreams and imaginations. Whatever you believe about yourself is ultimately true. Last but not least, our Black business of the day is the Chit Chat Tours. Chit Chat Communications has started a tour department with their company. Shouts out to Carla Morrison. You could discover the soul of Atlanta with these tours. They did them during FIFA. There's a Southside remix. Basically, you can come with a group of friends. If you're here touring the city or you're hanging out, reach out to chitchatcommunications.biz and you can take a tour of the city. And it is a sponsored tour where you'll learn a lot about the history. It's a great thing to do with family or friends or even young people. I would love to do, I would suggest that parents, when you come here with children or young people, take them on a chit chat tour of the city so that they can learn a lot more about the history of Atlanta. And just about their history, right? So it's more than that. And it shows they have these tours that go through all parts of the city. So you get the music industry history, you get the political history, you get the Blue Review cultural tour experience. There's so many different things that have happened here in the city of Atlanta. Brilliant by Carla Morrison and her team to create these experiences. She's a longtime publicist, colleague, friend of mine. And you can book these tours, and it's definitely, I love that Road to Resilience from Atlanta to Montgomery Freedom Ride Tour. These are things that we need to be taking advantage of as residents here in Atlanta, and specifically people that come here to visit, as opposed to just going out and partying. Make sure you take advantage of something that will be historical and teach you a little bit about your history and give you a cultural appreciation for the city. So that is our Black business of the day, the Chit Chat Tours. We want to thank Stone for being with us today. Hopefully
Thank you, Stone.
Not next week, but the following week for more political news. As we move into midterms, we definitely want to have his perspective here. And also, he is my co-host on Chapter and Verse. We have conversations with authors. There's a great one that just went up Monday on a wonderful author. You want to give a quick...
Yeah, we spoke with Janaea West, who is the writer and producer of the the web series Grown. There's a link to the trailer for the first season attached to the article that's up on Livingston Parker right now. Go watch it. It was really incredible to speak with her, and also the show is really good. We'll have sort of more authors coming through soon. We're sort of going to get back into novels with Hannah Sawyer, who is a finalist for the National Book Award next. So really looking forward to that, and we'll see you then.
All right. Well, thanks, Stone, for hanging out with us today. We will see you in a couple of weeks. Enjoy that hot weather in Houston.
I will try not to melt.
All right, Victor, I will see you on Friday. We thank you guys for watching. If you're listening to this replay, please let us know what you think of our conversations. Should public perception affect people in office? What do you think of the Nolan Wells situation? Comment, let us know what you think, and we will see you guys Friday, 12 noon on the East Coast, 9 a.m. on the West Coast. This is the replay.